Okay, welcome back to all of you guys. We're going to start with this next topic of enlightenment. What is enlightenment? But Boulder had a question from the previous talk, so I'm just going to kind of give him an opportunity to ask that, and then we're going to move into this topic. So, Boulder, if you'd like to go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah. So one thing I was really fascinated to discover that the Buddha in his time, there was a lot of this going on. You know, it's not like he just came out of the woodwork and did all this and it was just completely new. There was a lot of similar stuff going on.
Mm-hmm.
So a question that sort of sat with me is, okay, all this stuff that was going on, like what is it that the Buddha brought? What was the magic secret ingredient, that was missing,
Sure.
sort of thing.
Yeah. So prior to the Buddha, they were doing meditation. They were even had an understanding of the natural law of karma to a certain degree. There was even people talking about rebirth and all these kinds of things, but they didn't have the level of clarity that the Buddha had, and they didn't have the connection of how all this connects in order to be able to ultimately get to enlightenment. They even had, the idea of enlightenment around, prior to the Buddha. But a Buddha is going to come in and give it such clarity and crispness. They're going to illuminate the path to enlightenment for people to really be able to see how to do it. As you guys are going to hear here, I'm going to explain to you what a Buddha is, because you guys have heard the life story of the Buddha, but as part of this talk, I teach you what the Buddha actually is. So he gave a level of clarity to the natural law of karma and a level of clarity to meditation and how it's actually affecting the mind. And so nobody had put it together in the package, the complete package that the Buddha put everything together of, and then said, here, this is how to get to enlightenment. Okay. All right. So I'm going to move into this next talk of helping you understand what enlightenment is, because as I shared with you, if you understand the goal, if you understand the objective, you'll be able to more easily navigate your way to it. And then once your mind is actually enlightened, you'll know that your mind is actually enlightened. So I'm going to be pausing a few times as I go. That's typically how I teach. But as I'm talking and I'm sharing this with you, just understand that it's a real challenge for the unenlightened mind to understand what enlightenment is. Because if I sat here and I described to you what chocolate ice cream tastes like, and you've never actually tasted chocolate ice cream, at the end of our conversation, you're going to know more about what chocolate ice cream tastes like than you did when we first started, but you're not going to 100% know what chocolate ice cream tastes like until you actually taste it yourself. Just discussing it isn't going to help you fully understand it. So I can sit here and I can explain it to you all day long, and you'll understand more about what enlightenment is at the end of our talk as you do right now. But you just understand you're not going to know 100% of what enlightenment is by the end of our talk, because it's a challenge for the unenlightened mind to fully understand what enlightenment is. It is the ultimate goal of the path to enlightenment, but it's just challenging for the mind to understand it until you're starting to experience more and more of the qualities of it. But you'll surely know more about it at the end of our discussion than you do right now. So just keep that in mind as we're going through this talk, okay? So what enlightenment is it's a mental state that is attainable in this life or at death, where the mind is completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. The mind is unshakable. It's stable. It's steady. There's nothing that can shake up the mind. The mind will be calm and relaxed, but yet attentive and alert. Sometimes when we think about calm and relaxed, we think like, oh, just so calm and just so relaxed and kind of dull and lethargic. That's not what we're talking about here. This calm, relaxed mind, it's attentive, it's alert, it's sharp. That's the difference. So this enlightened mind is concentrated, it's steady, it's unshakable. All discontentedness has been eliminated from the mind. It's impossible for an enlightened being to experience anger. Even if they tried to make themselves angry, they would be impossible for them to do that, because the causes and conditions that are producing that stuff have been uprooted and eliminated out of the mind. So this is attainable during this life or at death, and human beings can attain this as well as beings in the heavenly realm. And I know that you guys haven't really explored this much yet, but the cycle of rebirth and the heavenly realm and all these realms of existence, the Buddha taught these things for a reason. But usually when people are first getting started like this, I suggest you just set it to the side. If you guys would like to talk about it, I'm more than pleased to talk to you about it. In volume 11, chapter 105, I give you 17 different criteria of how to independently verify the cycle of rebirth. Because as you've heard me share, there's no belief in the teachings of the Buddha. You're not believing in the 5 realms of existence. You're not believing in the cycle of rebirth. You can actually independently verify this, but you might not have the wisdom of how to do that right now. And that's why it's in volume 11, chapter 105. But it's in volume 11, chapter 105 for a reason, because it's not usually something you approach right at the beginning of your journey to enlightenment. So you're going to hear me talk in this talk where you'll hear things about these different realms or the cycle of rebirth. Just know that that's something that is there, and the Buddha taught it for a specific reason. But I just suggest you set it to the side at the very beginning, because what's happened in the past doesn't matter anymore. What may or may not happen in the future, it's in the future. It doesn't matter yet. Right now, you're in the present moment. You're in this human life. Your mind is discontent and you'd like to experience enlightenment. That's what you'd like to focus on, is the core central teachings. But there does become a time where you're going to need to understand more about the cycle of rebirth in these 5 realms. And that's the time that you'll be able to learn those things. So the enlightened mental state is attainable by human beings and heavenly beings. Beings in the hell realm, the animal realm, the afflicted spirit realm, they don't have the ability in that existence to be able to get to enlightenment. They need to be able to get to another existence. So being in this human realm is the best, most ideal thing that could ever happen for you, because you tend to have built-in motivation, because you don't like those painful feelings. The stress, the anxiety, the sadness, the frustration, you don't like those feelings. And you have kind of built-in motivation to be able to make your way to enlightenment. So, but beings in the human realm, in heavenly realm, do have the ability to be able to get to enlightenment. Once someone does get to enlightenment, they not only are experiencing this peace and calmness and these certain qualities, but they've actually escaped the cycle of rebirth. They will no longer be reborn, because the causes and conditions that produce discontentedness, those are the same causes and conditions that produce rebirth as well. And one of the beauties about the path to enlightenment is you can see your mind getting more and more enlightened, that you'll see the peace and joy coming into your mind more and more. Oftentimes when people are learning things like this, it's usually like believe, and hope something good happens when you die. That's not the way that the teachings of the Buddha work. The teachings of the Buddha are learn and grow and develop now in this life. And as you're doing so, you'll see the gradual improvement to the condition of your mind, because you'll be in situations where you were once angry and frustrated or agitated or annoyed. The same situation, and you're not experiencing those feelings anymore. So you'll know it's these teachings that are leading to the improvement to the condition of your mind and the condition of your life. So the Buddhist teachings, you'll gradually see these qualities coming into the mind more and more. Sometimes we talk about it as attaining enlightenment, but one of the ways you might think about it is that the mind's already enlightened, right? It's just that there's these pollutions that are in the way, hindering you from experiencing those qualities. And when you peel those away, the qualities of enlightenment start shining through more and more. Just like if you had the sun and there was clouds in front of the sun and you started peeling away the clouds, the rays of the sun will start shining through, and you will start experiencing more and more of the sun shining through the clouds. The same thing is true with enlightenment. As you start peeling away this pollution out of the mind, you'll see more and more of the qualities of enlightenment shine through. But the difference here is that in the analogy of the sun and the clouds are going to come back, right? But by the time you get the pollution out of the mind, the pollution doesn't actually come back into the mind. It's physically impossible for that to occur. So the pollutions that you're freeing the mind of is called craving, anger, and ignorance. This is the high-level way of referring to these pollutions. So I'm going to introduce you to the individual details of the pollutions here in a bit. We refer to them as the 10 fetters, but when we talk about them from the high level, we talk about them as craving, anger, and ignorance. You're going to learn about this on Wednesday morning. We refer to these as the 3 poisons, or the 3 unwholesome roots, or the 3 fires. So by freeing your mind of the pollutions or the taints or the defilements, by uprooting this out of the mind, that's what's actually producing enlightenment, getting those clouds out of the way. The mind will then be practicing generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom, which are the wholesome roots. So while enlightenment itself is a mental state that is attainable during this life or at death, the ideal would be to attain it during this life, because then you get to experience the rest of your life in this enlightened mental state. And while this mental state is referred to as enlightenment, the path to enlightenment is a purification of the mind. It's where you're gradually purifying the mind of these pollutions and eliminating the causes and conditions that are keeping the mind in the unenlightened state. So the attainment of enlightenment is the mental state itself, where the path to enlightenment is the progress of purifying the mind and cleaning up the mind to get to the point where you've eliminated the causes and conditions that are keeping the mind in the unenlightened state. Sometimes people refer to enlightenment as happiness or ultimate bliss. I don't usually refer to it that way, even though there's plenty of happiness in the enlightened mental state. Oftentimes when people think about happiness, they think about happiness from the frame of reference that they currently have. You've experienced happiness. You understand that your mind gets happy and excited, but then you get sad and frustrated. This is what's called conditional happiness, that oftentimes people are referring to enlightenment as, ultimate bliss, or, this uncontrollable happiness or something like that. This isn't actually true. There's plenty of happiness in the enlightened mental state where there's joy. The mind is cheerful, it's bright, it's uplifted. That's true. But I wouldn't describe it as ultimate bliss, because that's like bouncing off the wall kind of thing. That's not what the enlightened mind is experiencing. And you've experienced that before, where you're kind of bouncing off the wall with the happiness. It's not that. The happiness that you're experiencing in the enlightened mental state is unconditional happiness, where the mind is cheerful, it's bright, it's uplifted, that you don't experience the disgruntledness and frustration and irritation and annoyance. What people are typically talking about, if they're describing enlightenment as ultimate bliss, they're probably describing the jhanas. The jhanas are these 4 preliminary phases that your mind goes through before you get to the first stage of enlightenment. There's 4 stages of enlightenment, which I'm going to teach you here in a moment. But before you get to the first stage of enlightenment, there's 4 phases that the mind goes through. These are called jhanas. And when you get into that first jhana, the person can experience this bliss or this overwhelming excitement. And it's like night and day. From being off the path to enlightenment to being in the jhanas, it's like night and day. And oftentimes people that are in the jhanas, they think that they're actually enlightened because it's so, thrilling to experience those enhanced qualities of mind in those preliminary phases of the jhanas. So people can think that they're enlightened, and they will describe what they're experiencing as enlightenment. This is where sometimes you can hear people say that enlightened beings still get angry or frustrated or sad or lonely or bored. This isn't true. I can assure you that that's not the case. But for someone who's in the jhanas, they're still experiencing those things. And if they think they're enlightened, they're going to describe what they're experiencing as enlightenment, and this can be misleading. So sometimes people describe enlightenment as this ultimate bliss, or sometimes they'll even say that enlightened beings still get irritated or annoyed or frustrated or angry. This isn't actually true, but those people who are explaining that, they're not actually enlightened, because if they were enlightened, they would know that their mind no longer experiences any anger, sadness, or frustration, or any of those other discontent feelings. They're most likely in the jhanas, thinking they're enlightened and describing it that way. So there's plenty of happiness in the enlightened mental state, but I just don't describe it that way. It's unconditional happiness, because you understand conditional happiness, that if you got a raise at work, you'd be happy. Or if it's sunny outside, you might be happy. Or if your mom calls you and checks in on you, you might be happy about that, right? There's something that's producing the happiness, right? That's conditional happiness. You know what that feels like. But the happiness that we talk about in the enlightened mental state, it's not that. It's unconditional happiness, where the mind's just always happy. There doesn't need to be any condition met in order for that happiness to be there. So this is what enlightenment is. The advantages of getting to enlightenment is that the mind's completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. This is a permanent mental state that you'll be experiencing for the rest of your life. It's physically impossible for you to experience things like anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. The causes and conditions that are producing that have been uprooted. The pollutions have been eliminated out of the mind. And because of that, the mind's going to not only be having this peace and calmness in the mind, this serenity, this joy, but you'll notice that there's focus, concentration, clarity, and deep memory because the mind's now performing optimally. When those pollutions are in the mind, your mind can't perform optimally. So by the time you get to enlightenment, you'll notice this focus, concentration, clarity, and deep memory. It's persistent in your mind all the way, all day long. You'll have that concentration. It's physically impossible for you to not be concentrated by the time you get to enlightenment. You'll notice that you have deep wisdom about the world around you that other people don't have. There are certain challenges and difficulties that people will be experiencing around you, and you'll look at it and it'll be so easy for you. You'll just understand it fully, but they'll be having such struggles and difficulties with it. So there'll be a certain amount of deep wisdom that's in the mind that other people don't have. And this is where you really need to maintain your humbleness, because the mind's conceit can come in when these kinds of things are happening. The ego can really be triggered. So ultimately, by the time you get to enlightenment, you'll eliminate your ego, but in the process of getting there, when you're starting to notice this concentration and focus, the ego can kind of come in. So you're going to need to keep that in check. You'll notice that by the time you get to enlightenment, you'll be able to be polite, kind, friendly, and respectful to everyone. There's not anybody that you can't be polite, kind, friendly, and respectful with. That's probably not the case right now. There's probably certain situations where you're impolite, unkind, unfriendly, and disrespectful. And that's just because the pollutions that are in the mind, when you get rid of those, you'll be able to be polite, kind, friendly, and respectful to everybody and anybody, right? You'll not be harming others. There's certain harm that an unenlightened being will do through their intentions, their speech, and their actions. They will cause harm to other beings. You can't cause others to be discontent, but you can cause them harm. Causing someone harm is causing harm to their material possessions, to their physical body, or to their reputation. This is harms that you can actually cause. But by the time you get to enlightenment, you're not causing harm to any other beings. And because of you being polite, kind, friendly, and respectful, and not causing harm to others, you'll notice that your personal and professional relationships are really blossoming. They're at ease. Where right now you might have a certain amount of hostility or bitterness in your mind in certain relationships, that's all going to come back to you. When you're being bitter and harsh and hostile to people, it's all coming back to you. So by the time you get to enlightenment, your mind is completely at ease and you'll be able to be polite, kind, friendly, respectful to everybody. And if you're doing that for an extended period of time, you will clean up your relationships where more and more you'll see that people are being that way with you. By the time you get to enlightenment, you'll notice that people are being polite, kind, friendly, respectful to you as well, because you've been living your life that way for so long. There'll still be the occasional person that'll come along and you'll experience this person being bitter and harsh and hostile, but your mind won't be affected by it. You'll be completely at ease. You might even smile or kind of even chuckle inside that this person is functioning this way, but it won't affect your mind when they're doing that. Right now, if someone was bitter and harsh and hostile with you, you'd probably be angry or frustrated. But by the time you get to enlightenment, that's not the case. Your mind will be fully protected from those kinds of things. And your personal and professional relationships will really be blossoming. You'll notice that you'll get to the point where you're not even in a bad mood. That is physically impossible for you to have a bad mood because the causes and conditions that produce that are gone. They're uprooted from the mind. So these are some of the advantages, just some of the advantages of getting to enlightenment. The way that you get to enlightenment and how you do it is you need to learn and practice some core central teachings to get started. You're going to be learning pretty much all of these things as part of this course, where I'm going to share with you the 3 universal truths, the 4 noble truths, the Eightfold Path, the 5 precepts. This is where somebody normally gets started. This is like the core central teachings to really get started. This is going to help you move in the direction of enlightenment. But you're not believing these teachings. They're not rules or commandments. You need to learn them, investigate and examine them. You need to reflect on them to independently verify if they're true or false. And then you need to practice them. And I'm going to show you how to do that. When you're on the path to enlightenment, you're not a believer, you're not a follower, you're not a devotee. You're an independent practitioner looking to cultivate wisdom, right? And now with that wisdom, that's what your mind is awakening to, is that wisdom. So a teacher, we're like a tour guide. We're just kind of pointing out for you the things that you need to learn and understand. It's you that's doing the work on the path to enlightenment. A teacher, if they're either enlightened or close to it, they've already done the work. right? They're now pointing out for you how to do that same work that they did to be able to gain the wisdom that it takes to be able to get to enlightenment. So you need to always maintain the responsibility for your own growth and your own development as an independent practitioner who's journeying on this path to cultivate wisdom. And you're reaching out to a teacher to be able to learn the things and point out the things that you need in order to be able to progress on the path to enlightenment. So these are the kind of core teachings. And then you also need to look at the Brahma Viharas, which I'm going to be kind of referencing those in this class, but I have them in the book. In chapter 14, they're in there. These are 4 healthy mental states. And I teach them in other programs, like the Harmony of Relationships course I teach them. I teach them in the group learning program and some of the other programs that I teach, some of the other courses that I teach. But in this particular course, I just kind of reference them at one particular point. But these are 4 healthy mental states that's going to help you to transition the mind towards enlightenment. Then you're going to need to learn the 10 fetters inside and out, backwards and forwards, because this is what's actually keeping the mind in the unenlightened state. I'm going to introduce you to those here in a moment, but ultimately, by the time you get to enlightenment, you'll know them very thoroughly. There's a retreat that I teach every year in August where I spend an entire hour to an hour and a half on each individual fetter. I explain to you what it is, what the symptoms of it are, how to eliminate it, and how to know that you've actually eliminated it. So that's each August. And it's been recorded multiple times as I've taught it, but it's not something you normally approach when you first get started. When you first get started, you focus on the foundation. And that's what I'm going to help you to be able to do. But ultimately, you're going to need to know these 10 fetters inside and out. Then there's the 7 factors of enlightenment. This is actually a tool to refine the mind and kind of fine tune it. Sometimes because of the name of it, people think that it's to determine whether you are enlightened or you aren't enlightened. This isn't actually true. The 7 factors of enlightenment are tools to kind of refine the mind and bring it more to the middle. You'll be able to learn those at different times too. I have those in chapter 3 as well. And then you're going to need extensive meditation training as part of your journey to enlightenment. You're going to need to do many countless hours of meditating. Of course, you don't need to do multiple hours at a time, but you're going to need to do countless hours of meditation to accumulate and soak the mind and absorb the meditation into the mind. So this is how you would get to enlightenment, is by learning, examining, investigating, by reflecting to independently verify the teachings, and by practicing them. That's how you're actually going to transform the mind. If you just understood the teachings intellectually, you'll never get to enlightenment. You need to actually practice the teachings on a day-to-day basis. So do you guys have any questions up to this point? What enlightenment is or how to attain it, what the benefits are? No questions? Okay. I'm going to check here online, see if we have any questions. Okay. All right, I'm not seeing any questions. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is introduce you to the 10 fetters, because everything the Buddha taught in one way or another is helping you to eliminate some aspect of the 10 fetters. So I'm just going to introduce you to them so you can see the underlying causes and conditions that are producing all this discontentedness. And now when I share this with you, you'll be able to at least have a kind of a beginning introductory understanding of it, because everything the Buddha taught, everything I'm going to teach you is guiding you to eliminate these, but you don't usually focus on these real closely until later. But here at the beginning, having an introduction to them is really helpful. So the reason why we call these the 10 fetters is because during the lifetime of the Buddha, if you were someone that they were trying to keep confined to a certain area, like a prisoner, they would attach a fetter around your ankle. This was a shackle and a chain and a ball, and they would just keep you turned out in a field. Nowadays, we put prisoners in jail cells or prison cells, where during the lifetime of the Buddha, they would attach a fetter to your ankle. So when the Buddha discovers these 10 pollutions in the mind, he refers to them as fetters, because it's keeping the mind trapped and confined in this particular unenlightened mental state, experiencing discontentedness over and over and over again. And just like a prisoner, if you release the fetter off of the ankle and now you're free to roam about the world, it's the same thing as that when you eliminate these fetters out of the mind, your mind's now free. It's liberated. You're no longer experiencing anger and sadness where your mind's bound up and burdened with these heavy emotions. So these are called the 10 fetters for that reason. Some people refer to them as the taints or the pollutions or the defilements. These are other ways that you'll hear people refer to them. So this is the different ways that people just talk about them. And ultimately what you're doing is you're working to eliminate these out of the mind. So I'll introduce them to you, starting with this first one. This first one is called personal existence view. What personal existence view is where the mind has the idea or the concept that this body is you or that this mind is you. The mind clings to this body, this self-image, or it clings to the mind. It has this misunderstanding or this misperception. It's clinging to a self-identity or your self-image, thinking that this is who you are as a person. And then the mind wants to be perceived by others in a certain way. So if you've ever went to like a social situation and you spilled something on your clothing and you were embarrassed by that, that was your personal existence view. That was the confusion or the misunderstanding, the pollution of mind of personal existence view. The mind thought that this body is you and you're clinging to it, wanting it to be looking a certain way permanently. And now when you have spaghetti sauce all over your clothing, you feel embarrassed in this situation. Or if you've ever looked in the mirror and you saw a wrinkle or a mole or a pimple or a gray hair, or you started losing your hair and you were shaken up by that, that's your personal existence view. You're clinging to this body, wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way. There's this confusion or this misunderstanding in the mind, thinking that this body is who you are. And now you can only feel comfortable when you are being appearing to other people in a certain way, when you're being perceived by others in a certain way. If someone said to you, wow, you look so handsome. That shirt really brings out the colors of your eyes. You are so beautiful. You might be like, wow, they're talking about me. And you get like all these pleasant feelings because they're talking about me. This body is me. That's the mind's personal existence view, clinging to this body. But now it's only a matter of time because of impermanence that someone says, oh my gosh, where did you get that haircut? Are you serious? Are you going to walk around looking like that? Right? And now you're frustrated or angry or irritated, right? Because it's only a matter of time before somebody says something degrading and disparaging to you about how this physical body looks, right? So this is the mind's personal existence view that it can't be permanently happy or permanently joyful as long as you're clinging to this body, wanting it to be permanent, when in reality it is impermanent. Or the mind can cling to a self-identity in your mind, like about your culture, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, your nationality, your job or occupation. You can cling to this as who you think you are. And now, once again, if you're in a restaurant and 2 tables over, they're saying, wow, all Indian people are so loving and kind, or all Brits or Aussies are loving and kind, or Chinese people or Americans or Icelandic people, they're so loving and kind. You're like, wow, they're talking about me. You feel really great about that. But now it's only a matter of time before you flip on the news or you hear somebody else at a different restaurant and they're talking in degrading and disparaging ways about the place where you come from. And if you're holding that identity in your mind as who you think you are, you'll be frustrated and irritated in this situation, right? Or let's just say you're in a relationship with a boyfriend or girlfriend and you identify with, I am a boyfriend, I am a girlfriend, I am a husband, I am a wife. Now, as long as you're in that relationship, there's a certain level of comfort. But when you guys break up and now you're single, your mind doesn't identify that way and you feel uncomfortable. And you might have felt like you wanted to hurry up and get right back into another relationship so the mind could reassume that identity. Because the mind doesn't understand the root problem here is the personal existence view. Just jumping into another relationship doesn't actually solve your problem, right? So if the mind's clinging to a self-identity around your culture, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, your nationality, your job or occupation, you'll experience discontentedness because of it. I'll give you guys a little story of someone, a student one time contacted me. It was right after COVID. He said, David, I'm having so much trouble after COVID. I was like, really? What's going on? He said, I usually go into these stores and before COVID, I would just pay in cash for things like a coffee. And I would just place my order for 30 seconds, give them my cash, take my coffee, and I would leave. But now they're turning around this computer screen and I have to use contactless payment. And the computer screen says, what do you want to tip us? 25%, 30%, 35%, or what have you. And he said, I'm a great tipper and I don't tip them in these situations. And I feel really bad. I feel really conflicted in these situations and I don't understand why. He said, before COVID, I could just pay cash and leave, but now I'm confronted with this tipping screen and I don't feel good when I don't tip. He's like, David, I want you to know I am a good tipper. I was like, oh, this is your personal existence view. You think that I am a good tipper, and now when you tip, you feel comfortable, and when you don't tip, you feel uncomfortable. This is the mind's personal existence view. So the mind can cling to any number of things as who you think you are as a person, even something like I am a great tipper. So your mind ultimately needs to get to a point where you eliminate this. And this is called realizing non-self, where you realize that this body is not you, this mind is not you, that this self-image isn't you, this identity that your mind's clinging to isn't you. You need to be able to shed this out of the mind. So we're going to talk about this a little bit more tomorrow. And there's even classes that I teach the entire class just on this one particular fetter. So next is doubt. Doubt is where you have doubt about the teachings of the Buddha and the ability of them to attain enlightenment. You might have doubt right now. Oftentimes people do when they first come to the path to enlightenment. They'll have doubt about his teachings. They might have doubt about the Buddha, the teachings, the community that you're part of. You might have doubt about your teacher, or you might have doubt about your own ability to attain enlightenment. And if you have doubt, that's normal, right? You don't have to run and hide from that. You can just admit it to yourself. Yeah. You've never maybe explored the teachings of the Buddha deeply enough that you still have doubt about whether or not they would actually lead to enlightenment. The way that you eliminate doubt is through investigation and examination of the teachings. You don't eliminate your doubt through belief or blind faith. That's not how you eliminate doubt, because with blind faith and belief, you don't know what's true or false. You're just believing it because somebody convinced you to believe it, or you convinced yourself to believe it. The way that you get rid of doubt about something is you investigate it, you examine it. So you can essentially harness your doubt. If you have doubt right now, you can just be like, yeah, I don't know if the teachings lead to enlightenment. I'm talking as if I'm you, right? I know that they lead to enlightenment 100%, right? But maybe you have doubt and you can just admit to yourself, yeah, I don't know if the teachings lead to enlightenment or not. So what you can do is you can roll up your sleeves. You can turn this doubt into an inquisitive mind that you're like, yeah, I don't know whether the teachings of the Buddha lead to enlightenment or not, but I'm going to find out and I'm going to sink my teeth into them and I'm going to investigate them and examine them. And when you do that, if you do that for long enough, you'll come to the conclusion that indeed they are 100% leading to your enlightenment, because you're going to see situations where you were once angry and frustrated and bitter and harsh and hostile and you don't do that anymore. You'll see that they're improving the condition of your mind in your life. By the time you get rid of doubt, you won't be enlightened yet, but you'll know that they are leading to your enlightenment and you'll have no doubt whatsoever. And this comes through examination of the teachings, not through blind belief or faith. Then there's wrong behavior and observances. There's two different sides to this. What wrong behavior is that in the unenlightened state, there's a certain amount of moral conduct that you're involved in that is harmful. And it's unwise for you to be doing those things. But you're still doing those things and you might not even have the wisdom to know that they're unwise. So there's a certain amount of moral conduct that's causing harm. And as long as you're putting out that harm through your moral conduct, that harm is going to come back to you. It's kind of like if there was an oil pipe that busted and was spewing oil all over the world, you need to shut down the oil pipe, because as long as you keep spewing oil all over the world, you're going to have a mess to clean up. So this wrong behavior, eliminating that portion of this fetter, is to clean up your moral conduct to the point that you're going to see in the Eightfold Path, where you're no longer causing harm through your moral conduct based on the things that are in the Eightfold Path. And that's going to shut down a significant portion of the harm that you're causing in the world, which means it's going to shut down a significant amount of the harm that you're experiencing, that it's not going to be coming back to you because you're shutting that down. Then there's this wrong observances. What this is that In some cases, people have the idea that rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, or prayer, or things like this is going to lead to improvement in their day-to-day life. So sometimes people can be clinging to those kinds of things and have the thoughts and ideas that somehow someone sprinkling water on you is going to make your life better, or someone tying a string on your wrist is going to make your life better, or some other thing like this. There's all kinds of rituals and ceremonies and worship that people do. The Buddha taught that none of this stuff leads to enlightenment, because the underlying cause of what's keeping the mind in the unenlightened state is a lack of wisdom, or this ignorance, or this unknowing of true reality. You're going to see it here in a moment. And there's no amount of sprinkling water on you or doing rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, and things like this that is going to lead to the cultivation of wisdom to be able to help you cultivate your mind. So as long as your mind thinks that rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, and things like this is going to lead to improvement for your life, you're not understanding the underlying problem that the Buddha discovered, which is this ignorance or this unknowing of true reality. Whether you do those things or not, it's up to you. That's your choice. Everything in your life is your choice. The Buddha's not telling you what you should or shouldn't be doing. He's just helping you to be able to see this pollution. Because as long as you have this idea that rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, and things like this is leading to your improvement in life, you're not actually doing the real work that you need to do in order to improve your life, which is cultivate wisdom. So if your mind still thinks that way, there's this wrong observances in the mind. Whether you choose to do these things or not, it's a choice for you. Like maybe you're going out with your family. Maybe it's a family event. You're going to the temple or the synagogue or the church or the mosque or something like this. And now when you go, they're doing rites and rituals and ceremonies and worship, and you're just kind of hanging out because maybe you guys are going to go do something after this event. Sure, go hang out with people, right? Do whatever you like to do. It's your life, it's your decisions, it's your results. If your mind understands that these rites and rituals and ceremonies don't lead to improvement in one's life, you've eliminated wrong observances, right? That your mind understands that there's no amount of rituals or ceremonies that's going to lead to improvement in one's day-to-day life. So this is what wrong behavior and wrong observances are. Then there's something called central desire. Central desire is where the mind is longing, yearning through the sense bases, wanting permanently agreeable contact. The sense bases are the eyes, ears, nose, the tongue, the body, and then the mind itself. When we talk about craving, desire, attachment, wants, and expectations, this is primarily what we're talking about, is sensual desire. The mind is longing, yearning for agreeable contact. And if you have agreeable contact, you get pleasant feelings. But if you don't have agreeable contact, you get painful feelings. So for example, if you're sitting at a traffic light and this car pulls up to you with a certain music that you like, you're like, yeah, that's my jam. All right, let's party. Party, 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 party. Let's dance. Let's have a good time, right? You're so excited because this person's pulling up to you with some music that your sensual desire, you find it to be agreeable. But then you pull up to another traffic light and somebody else pulls up with a different type of music. And now you're frustrated or angry. You might be blaming that person or blaming the music. It's actually your sensual desire that's causing this. Your mind is looking for agreeable contact through the ears. It's craving that permanently agreeable sound through the ears, but you can't get that because you live in an impermanent world. Or say you're walking down the street and you smell some flowers coming out of a flower shop. You're like, wow, that smells so good. Oh my gosh, I could stand here all day and smell that. But now you walk a few more steps and you smell the sewer. And now you're repulsed by that. Oh, that's horrible. Why don't they cover that thing up, right? This is the mind's sensual desire that's causing that the mind's longing, yearning through the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, the body, and the mind itself for permanently agreeable contact. This is why you have some foods that you like and some foods that you dislike. And you might be pushing away those foods that you dislike. But that's just allowing your sensual desire to stay, right? You're going to need to get to the point where you don't have that in your mind, where you just look at food as something that nourishes the body. And you can eat any kind of food and you can maintain your joy, you can maintain your happiness. But right now, you might only be happy when you eat these kinds of foods. And if you taste these kinds of flavors, You don't like it. Maybe you're frustrated or annoyed. But you need to be able to eliminate this central desire, because what this central desire is doing is it's having this favoring and opposing, or this agreeable or disagreeable contact. And now when you have agreeable contact, you get pleasant feelings. But when you have disagreeable contact, you want to push it away. And this is where the ill will comes in. That when the mind's getting what it wants, it has those pleasant feelings. But when the mind's not getting its central desires fulfilled, that's where your ill will can arise. The anger, the hostility, the bitterness. And now you'll become unskillful through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. And now this is where you damage relationships. So these central desire and ill will really go together, because it's because of central desire that the ill will keeps arising, because the mind is experiencing this disagreeable contact through the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, the body, and the mind. And now when it's getting that disagreeable contact, it thinks the problem is external. So that's when the ill will, the anger, and the bitterness and hostility is arising. When in reality, that is being caused within one's own mind because of its central desire. So I'm going to pause here and see if you guys have any questions on these 5 before I talk about the next 5. Any questions here? Looks like Joycelyn has a question.
Yes, in the about personal existence view, I'm thinking of it in terms of young children. Is it personal existence view necessary initially?
In our human life, we don't need personal existence view at all. We don't need it. But in the animal realm, we needed it. Because as an animal, if we were a deer and there was a lion on the edge of the forest, we needed to run, right? Because we didn't have the wisdom to understand anything different. So as an animal, we needed that to be able to run away and realize that, oh my gosh, this body is going to die. I need to run. As a human being, we don't need this. We can make wise decisions, but as an animal, we needed it. But as a human being, we don't need personal existence view. But we're accumulating that all through our life, because at birth, we're given a name. You know, I don't know if this was your birth name. Was Joycelyn your birth name?
Yes.
That was given to you. So there's this name, right?
Right.
And now you have this, you know, kind of personality and character that you start to develop as part of this name. You might not even like it when people mispronounce your name. That's your personal existence
Yes,
view.
it is.
If someone calls you
Jocelyn,
you probably don't like it, right? That's your personal existence view. Like, I am Joycelyn. That's who I am. That's your personal existence view. So you would like to get to the point where if someone calls you something else, it doesn't affect your mind. You're completely peaceful and joyful. So you can let that go. That's the only way you will get to peace and joy, is if you do train your mind to let go of those kinds of things. Because otherwise, the mind's craving this permanence that I want everyone to call me Joycelyn, right? But you're not going to ever get that. As you know, you're 70 years old. There's been plenty of people that have mispronounced your name. You're never going to get to everybody saying it the same way. So that's where your mind needs to understand that this name doesn't define who you are as a person, and you can let that go. And now, of course, if people ask you, like, how do you pronounce your name? You let them know. But when someone mispronounces it, you're completely fine with that. You don't get frustrated or irritated or annoyed. Okay. So your mic went out, so I'll just repeat it for the people online. The question was, is it possible to teach this to a young child? The answer is yes. I started teaching my son this when he was 6 years old. And by the time he was probably 8 or 9, he fully understood it. And he was able to realize non-self, where he no longer identifies with this. But there was a period of time where he was struggling with that. He actually had a mohawk at one point, and, you know, he was really into this mohawk and all these kinds of things, and, you know, certain things. So you can teach it to a young child. They can understand it, but usually you don't start with this. You usually start with things like impermanence, teaching them that first, and discontentedness and the Four Noble Truths and all these other things. It wasn't until he was probably 8, 9, maybe even 10 before he really 100% understood personal existence view, and he was able to eliminate it from his mind. Yep. You're welcome. Okay. You have a question, Boulder? Yeah. Jocelyn. Jocelyn. This is one of the things that community can do for someone when they know they have an attachment is they can kind of trigger it and help the person to be able to let it go. Her name is Joycelyn, but we can call her Joycelyn. What is the one you don't like? What's the one you don't like? Jocelyn. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Joy. So, but
the mic went out. I think the batteries are going dead. They're impermanent, obviously. We've got more up here in the cabinet. If you guys need to change it, you're welcome to change it.
often when monks are ordained, they change their name.
Mm-hmm.
Is that
why?
That's why.
Yep. And here in Thailand, it's very easy to change your name too. Like at one point I tried to change my name in the USA. It was, really challenging. It's like you got to go through a lawyer. They got to file all these documents. They got to do background checks, all these other things. Here in Thailand, you just go down to the government office, sign a few papers, and you've changed your name because they understand. Their whole society has been set up for people to be able to accomplish the elimination of personal existence view. So this is one of the ways that you can do that is by using different names and being comfortable with that. So like my son, his nickname that we gave him at birth is Bailan, right? But people have trouble pronouncing that. So his friends at school started calling him Billy, right? And he was completely fine with that. It didn't matter to him that they were calling him Billy, right? So that's what you would ultimately like to get to, that you don't have this craving for things to be done one way or another. And when someone asks you, what's your name? You might say, oh, my name is this, but call me whatever you like. It's no big deal. Like that's essentially one of the aspects of personal existence view, that you won't have this craving for it to be one way or the other. You can maintain your peacefulness and joy either way. Mm-hmm.
Then I also have a question about sensual desire,
Mm-hmm.
which is a big one. But there are things like, instinct or drive
Mm-hmm.
that we have that are so primal. I have to know when I'm hungry. I have certain needs
Mm-hmm.
that I have to fulfill,
Mm-hmm.
like hunger, to be warm. And then there are other things that, like sex, people say that's a need or a instinct that we have. So some of them, like we can do away with or minimize or control. Some of them are definitely very functional and important.
So you need to be sure you understand the difference between a need and the essential desire. A need is something you need in order to sustain your life, right? You need food, clothing, shelter, and medical care. Those are the things that you need. And if we'd like to toss water into the food category, we could, but we might say food, clothing, shelter, medical care. That's what are the needs in order to survive in this world. Everything else is not a true need, right? So the sensation that you get when you're hungry, when this body needs food, that physical pain that you get is an indication to the mind like, hey, you need to go get some food, right? So that's going to be there. But the central desire would be where you want this body to be permanently comfortable. And now when it's comfortable and you're full, you feel happy. But now when you feel that little bit of hunger pain, there's grumpiness or irritability. That's not biological that is occurring there. That's all what's happening inside the mind. The mind is having a craving for this body to be permanently comfortable. And now when you feel that little bit of discomfort in the body, the mind gets frustrated or annoyed or grumpy or irritable. That's all happening inside the mind. So you can pursue your needs without central desire. Food, clothing, shelter, medical care. You can pursue all these things without central desire and acquire those things. Central desire is completely different. Central desire is where you're having favoring and opposing. It's like, no, I don't want that food. I want this food. I can't be happy with this food. I want this food. So food is a need, but the mind, because of its central desire, is going to have wants where it's longing, yearning. It can't be happy with this food. So by the time you get to the elimination of central desire, you can be happy with any food, any and all food. But you can't do that as long as you have central desire, because you're going to be favoring and opposing. The same thing with clothing. You'll have certain central desires where it's like, when I wear these clothes, I like that. But if I had to wear those clothes, oh man, I can't go outside. That's partially your personal existence view, but it's also the central desire as well. So whenever you're having any one particular bout of discontentedness, there's usually more than one fetter involved, particularly early on. It's never just one fetter. It's typically multiple fetters. Do you understand here the difference between a need and a want? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So since you brought up sex, sex is not a need. It's not something you need for survival. It's something that the mind wants because of its central desire. Central desire. The mind is longing, yearning for agreeable contact. And one of the reasons why sex is so pleasurable is because all the sense bases are involved. The eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, the body, and then the mind itself, because you're now stimulating all these senses. And one of the reasons why people have so many problems when they go to the dentist is because all the sense bases are involved and they don't like that contact. The eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, the body, and the mind itself. And it's like, oh, I don't like this person poking around in my mouth, right? Because you're like right there up in all your sense bases. That's why people don't like that, right? Because they're now opposed to it. They're repulsed by it. So sex isn't a need. It's not a requirement for life. But when you have central desire, you'll want those sense bases stimulated. And then at the height of that, there's the orgasm, right? But that's not a requirement for life and to sustain one's life.
Yeah. The lack of a personal existence view make you less ambitious. In other words, is the path to enlightenment not aligned with, your ambitions or aspirations in life? Can they coexist?
Yeah, someone who is enlightened, they're going to have plenty of ambition and aspirations. Like, look at the Buddha. He aspired to have his teachings reach the entire world. And each day he worked towards that goal with enthusiasm and ambition, but he knew it wasn't going to be during his lifetime that was going to occur. That's where you need to be able to understand how to pursue a goal, objective, or interest without basing your feelings or emotions on it. Getting rid of any of these things doesn't actually eliminate your goals and ambitions and enthusiasm. It actually enhances it. Because oftentimes what an individual is doing in the unenlightened state is they're pursuing certain objectives through their cravings, desires, attachments, through their central desire, that they might have a desire for more money, so they're motivated to do this thing, or they have a desire to look great in front of their peers or in front of their family. They're having this ego that wants to get satisfied, so they might chase and chase and chase and chase and chase, or they may want that bigger house, so they're motivated to go to that job and work really hard because they want that bigger house. Right? So those types of things will actually burn out. This is why people, when they work, they burn out. We actually call it that, right? Because what they've done is they've burned out their craving. And now when they burned out their central desire for that particular craving, they're not motivated to go to work anymore. They're just not interested because they don't want that house anymore. And now they're not motivated or enthused to go to work each day. And it feels dull and mundane and boring to go to this job. Whereas if you did that, your cravings are going to burn out, and now you're going to swing to the other side where you're feeling dull and lethargic and lazy. Coming to the middle is to have ambition and enthusiasm and motivation, but is to do so through wise decision making rather than basing it in craving, desire, and chasing after the objects of your affection, because that is temporary. That will burn out, and ultimately you won't be able to meet your ultimate goals. But if you work from a position of wise decision making, you can do that and sustain that long term, because you're not chasing pleasant feelings, because that's what that person's doing, is they're chasing pleasant feelings. If I get my new house, I'll have all these pleasant feelings because I can show my friends how nice of a house I have. Or if I can get that bigger title at work, then I get my pleasant feelings because I can show off to everybody this new title. But that all burns out, right? Because the mind's experiencing temporary pleasure. But if you're not chasing pleasure, you're just making wise decisions of how to move your life forward. You can actually do this until the end of your life, because your ambition and enthusiasm is coming from wise decisions rather than craving, desire, attachment, which will easily burn out on you. Mm-hmm.
Mr. David, I have a question with the personal existence view. As you know, right now I'm trying to find a job, and I want to present myself in a certain way to my future employer. Okay. So I care about how I'm perceived.
Mm-hmm.
I care a lot about what how do I articulate this? Like, I don't want them to find something wrong. So, like, you know, in my past, if I was to go get a job or I was in a job interview, I did look in the mirror before I left. I've interviewed people, so I've been on both sides of the fence. And I'm going to probably have to wear something nice, like a nice shirt, you know. But is any of this, nothing is required, but if I don't look presentable, I may not get the job.
Okay. So in order to be able to make your way towards enlightenment, one of the things you need to be able to do is you need to be able to understand vocabulary in the way that we talk. Because when we lack wisdom, we'll say things that aren't necessarily representing true reality. So like when we say the word care, like I care about this thing, oftentimes people are associating care and craving, desire, attachment is the same thing. They're using those words interchangeably, where it's actually not the same thing, right? So like, I care about you. I care that you're here and you're in a safe environment and that the temperature is comfortable for you and there's water and food and there's a bathroom. I care about you, but I'm not attached to you. If you died today, I wouldn't be upset. And it's not because I don't love you or I don't care about you. It's just that I understand you're impermanent. You're not going to be here permanently. It's just not possible. So this craving, desire, attachment, oftentimes people think that if they don't have that they don't have care. That's not true. These are actually two separate things. You can care about somebody while not being attached to them. Being attached means that your emotions are attached to them. That means that you can only be happy if that person is alive, for example, or if you're in a relationship with that person, you can only be happy when that thing is occurring, right? So in relationship to what you're describing, it's possible to care about how you look when you're interacting with other people, but not base your emotions or feelings on that. That's the craving, desire, attachment. So it's a matter of stripping away this personal existence view and not forming your feelings based on how this body looks, but at the same time, you're making wise decisions to show up to a job interview looking presentable. But now if you show up to that job interview and you spill something on your clothing or they comment about your clothing, you're not shaken up by that. Your mind is completely stable and steady. So you can care about how you look and make choices through wise decision making to show up to a job interview or immigration, to get a visa or whatever it is. You can care about those things without having this longing, yearning, and this craving and forming your feelings based on whether they perceive you in a certain way or not. And that's where you would like to get to, in the middle way. So it's not about whether you choose certain clothing or not. That's not what it determines whether you have personal existence view. It's how the mind is relating to this whole experience. And that's why part of the path to enlightenment, you usually go through a period of time where you wear either simple clothes. That's why the Buddha wore rag robes. And that's why some people dress in kind of the same clothes every day, is to train their mind to not have personal existence view. But there's other ways to do this too. As a household practitioner, you can stack your clothes up and you can just peel off of the top. not giving your mind an opportunity to grab the clothing that you want to wear in any given situation. So like if you're going at work and you need to dress formally, you could have your formal clothes and now you just pick off the top and you wear whatever is on the top. And then when you have your casual clothes, you just pick off the top. And you're not giving your mind an opportunity to think, who am I going to see today? And how do I want to look? And now you put on one set of clothes. You're like, nah, that's not how I want to look. Put on another set of clothes. No, that's not how I want to look. So this would be the mind having personal existence view. You're almost obsessively trying to find that one shirt that you will feel comfortable to go out in the world wearing that one particular shirt today. So that would be personal existence view. Your mind shaken up because it wants to be perceived by others in a certain way. But you can still care about how this being looks and now just make a wise choice to put on a nice shirt and go do that job interview. And if you get the job, great. And if you don't, that's fine too. But you're just going to make your wise decisions to try your best to get that job. And part of it is you know that they're judging you and how you look. And it's wise for you to put on a nice shirt. But now you're not basing your emotions on that. As you walk down the street, you're not extra proud or extra prideful. Or if you have a hole in your pants, you're not feeling, or you have the glue on your glasses, you're not feeling like diminished and less of a person. So you'll still care about what this being is looking like, but you're not going to base your emotions and your feelings on it. That's the difference. And there's different training that you need to be able to accomplish that. Just talking about it intellectually, you can't get the mind to do that. You need to be able to put the mind in the situation where sometimes you do walk around with glue on your glasses and your mind thinks that people are looking at you in a certain way. And now your mind has to deal with that. So there's all kinds of training that you need to employ to get rid of this personal existence view. Mm-hmm. Yep, you're welcome. Okay, so now we'll go to the next 5. These are called the higher fetters. I'm going to talk about 6 and 7 together because they're actually very similar in nature. What desire for form is where you have a desire or a craving to exist in one of the form realms, like the animal realm or the human realm. Your mind's holding on to this existence, either in the human realm or you're longing, yearning to be in the animal realm, meaning you're not content in the present moment. You want something else, right? At one time in my life, I was like, I wish I was a bird. I'd really like to be a bird. That'd be so cool to like fly around and look around at everything. That'd be so cool to be a bird. That's a desire for form. Or if you have desire to exist in this world and you want to be here permanently, that's desire for form, right? So you need to get to the point where you don't crave existence, but you don't crave non-existence either. Craving non-existence would be to want to kill yourself. So by the time you get to enlightenment, you're content and peaceful and joyful in the present moment. Your mind's not longing, yearning for the next thing, like being in the animal realm or continuing in the human realm. Then there's desire for formless, which is essentially the same thing. It's just a desire to exist in the formless realms, like hell or afflicted spirits, which are ghosts, or the heavenly realm. Now, most people, a lot of people have this desire, if they're going to have a desire for formless, to be in the heavenly realm. But there are individuals who have a craving, a desire to be in the hell realm or to be in the realm of afflicted spirits, right? There's people that have that. Very few, but there are people like that in the world. So if someone has a craving to exist in hell, afflicted spirits, or heavenly realm, they're not content in the present moment. They're longing, yearning for something else. Gosh, if I could just get to heaven, right? I just want to be in heaven. People think that's a permanent existence. It's not permanent. You can see the world around you is impermanent. The heavenly realm is not permanent. So someone who has a desire to be in the heavenly realm, they're not content in the present moment. By the time you get to enlightenment, you're content and peaceful in the present moment. You're not longing, yearning for something else. So an individual is going to need to eliminate this desire for form and desire for formless. And by the time you do this, you will have eliminated your fear of death. If there's any fear of death in your mind, you will have eliminated that already. And there are certain tools and techniques to help you to be able to do that. But that's what desire for form and desire for formless is. Then there's something called conceit. Conceit is the arrogance, the pride, the measuring and comparing, thinking that you're superior to other people or that you're inferior to other people. This is the mind's conceit, where you're judging other people. This is common in the human mind. You might have been to a social situation and someone walked up to you and said, "So, what do you do?" And you're like, "Oh, I'm a lawyer." And they're like, "Well, I'm a doctor," right? This is the conceit, putting yourself above people or below people. And now when you talk down to people, they're going to push you aside because they don't like that, right? And then when you talk up to people, your mind's going to be all shaken up. Maybe you go into your boss's office and your mind's all shaken up. You feel uncomfortable being in your boss's office because you think they're so far above you, and you don't perform well in those situations. Your mind can't be focused and concentrated because you think this person is above you. So getting rid of the conceit is to get rid of this measuring and comparing, this pecking order that the mind has. This is where it actually comes from, is the animal world. In the human world, we don't need conceit, but in the animal realm, we needed conceit. If we didn't have conceit, we wouldn't have actually survived. Because when we were in a pack of wolves, we needed to know who's the alpha male, who's the alpha female. They're teaching us how to hunt. They're teaching us how to be wolves. If we didn't know who that was, we wouldn't have survived. Or when we were in a herd of elephants, we needed to know who's the matriarch of our herd, because she's the one who's showing us the food, the watering holes, the migration paths. If we didn't know who the matriarch of our herd was, we would have just been roaming around as an elephant in the forest, not knowing what to do as an elephant. So we needed this pecking order in the animal realm. But in the human realm, we don't need it. So we retain it from our animal existences, and now there's this conceit in the mind. Oftentimes people refer to this as ego. The word ego didn't exist during the lifetime of the Buddha, so he rightly separated this into conceit and personal existence view. What we refer to as the ego is actually personal existence view and conceit together. So you need to be able to dissolve or eliminate or eradicate the ego out of the mind, where you no longer look at yourself as being above or below people. Because when you're in a social situation, you'll talk to one group of people in one way and another group of people in another way. And your mind's constantly trying to figure out how to talk to these different people. And you can't be peaceful and joyful in this situation. But you'd like to get to a point where you just treat everybody equally, and you see yourself as being equal to everybody. You don't put yourself below people, which is just as dangerous as putting yourself above people. You're not interested in doing that. So if you're walking down the street and you see the king or the queen of Thailand, which I don't think you will, but you might, you never know, right? You'd like to be able to be, "Hey, good morning, sir. Good morning, ma'am. Sawadee krap. Nice to see you," right? But if you see someone sweeping the street outside, "Good morning, sir. Good morning, ma'am. How are you?" Right? Same thing. Right? You don't have to have this conceit. You can just treat everybody equally. And that's what will happen when you're able to eliminate your conceit. And now you can be at ease, and you just have one way of treating everyone: polite, kind, friendly, and respectful. But if you have this conceit, you'll be measuring and comparing, and you're not having this just one way to treat everybody. And now your mind's having to constantly switch between the two modes of above me, below me, and your mind can't be peaceful. It can't be joyful. And people will push you aside because they're not interested in being around someone with ego and arrogance and pride and trying to talk down to them. Then there's restlessness. Restlessness is an overactive mind where it's kind of obsessively thinking about the same things over and over and over again. It's kind of like the old time record player. You know, if you guys remember the record players, I don't know how old you guys are. Like, remember with Skip, right? It would just be doing the same thing over and over and over again. That's what your mind's doing with restlessness. It's just kind of obsessively over and over and over and over and over and over again. And if you have that kind of overactive mind, you'll tend to see it in the body. If you've ever sat somewhere and you bobbed your knee, or you tapped your foot, or you tapped your hand, or you tapped a pencil, that's because your mind's overactive and it's coming through the body. The mind's the boss. The body's the employee. The body's just following along. So if you're sitting there tapping the pencil, it's because your mind's overactive and it's coming through the body. Right? So by the time you get rid of this restlessness, your mind will just be calm and steady and stable all the time. You won't have this constant fidgetiness, kind of always on the go, wanting to go all the time. Then the fetter of all fetters it's referred to as ignorance, but I don't think this is the best way to refer to it. This is what most people are translating it as. Remember, a Buddha wouldn't talk in a degrading and disparaging way towards other people, but that's kind of what this word ignorance is. Like, I would never refer to someone as ignorant, right? That would be an unwise way to refer to someone. It'd be degrading and diminishing to them. So a better way to think about this fetter is the unknowing of true reality. That there's a lack of wisdom, that there's confusion in the mind, there's misunderstanding, right? This is what the Buddha is describing, that there's this lack of wisdom of true reality and how the world truly works. This is what's keeping the mind trapped in the unenlightened state, is this lack of wisdom, that the mind just doesn't understand what it doesn't understand. For example, the mind doesn't even know that these 10 fetters even exist, has no idea what they even are. That's the lack of wisdom. The mind has no idea of things like the 3 universal truths or the 4 noble truths. It lacks wisdom of those. It doesn't even know the Eightfold Path or the 5 precepts or any of these other things, that it just lacks wisdom. It just doesn't understand what it doesn't understand. It doesn't understand the natural law of karma, of cause and effect, action and result. Oftentimes people blame what they experience on good luck or bad luck, or destiny or fate, or they might think that it's God that's controlling what they experience, or they might think it's some entity called the universe that is controlling what they experience, or they might blame other people for what they are experiencing. And this is just a lack of wisdom that the mind has. So as long as there's this lack of wisdom in the mind, it will continue to struggle over and over and over again. This lack of wisdom, or this ignorance, gets eradicated through your practice of the teachings, by you investigating and examining the teachings, not believing them, but investigating and examining them. You then reflect on them to independently verify if they're true or false. Then you practice the teachings. It's your practice is where the ignorance is getting eliminated. If you just intellectually understood, you don't have full wisdom yet. For example, when we were growing up as kids, we probably understood and we were taught that using drugs and alcohol was unwise. We might have been taught that, and we intellectually understood that it was unwise, but we still did it, right? That's because of our ignorance, our unknowing of true reality. We didn't realize we were putting poison into our body, and now it's going to affect the mind, it's going to affect the body, it's going to affect our relationships, it's going to affect our wealth and our ability to sustain our life. It's going to affect our happiness and our joy. So intellectually, we understood that drugs and alcohol were unwise, but we still did it because of our lack of wisdom, because of our ignorance. So the way that ignorance gets eradicated is through the cultivation of wisdom, and you're actually making decisions through that wisdom. It's not just the intellectual part. So knowledge is the intellectual understanding of something. Wisdom is that you're actually choosing to make decisions in your life through that knowledge that you've acquired. That's where you now have wisdom. So your wisdom is eradicated through your practice and actually making decisions through that wisdom that you've been acquiring. And this is why there's no rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship that'll lead to enlightenment. Because there's no amount of rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, or prayer that's going to cultivate wisdom. It's impossible for those things to do that. So that's why back here, the Buddha has wrong observances, because you need to be able to understand the underlying problem is this ignorance. This is the fetter of all fetters. This is the one that's keeping all the other ones in place. If it wasn't for this one, none of the others would actually exist. So do you guys have any questions on any of these? No questions? So when you'll see here in a minute, when we talk about the 4 stages of enlightenment, you actually eliminate these by the time you get to the 3rd stage of enlightenment. And then when you get to enlightenment itself, you will have eliminated the higher fetters. So you normally are focused on the lower fetters first. This is like a personal growth plan, essentially what the Buddha is teaching you. This is kind of like the order that you tend to focus on these fetters. It doesn't mean you can't focus on the others at any given time, but you tend to eliminate them in this order. Because, for example, this restlessness right here, you wouldn't be able to eliminate that until you get rid of sensual desire, because it's the sensual desire that's causing the restlessness in the mind. And when you get rid of sensual desire, you will have eliminated probably a good 90-95% of your restlessness but there's still going to be a little bit in there. So you wouldn't be able to eliminate restlessness without first eliminating this. You wouldn't be able to eliminate conceit without first eliminating personal existence view. So that's why it's lower and higher, because you need to eliminate these before you can actually eliminate these up here, right? So you wouldn't be able to eliminate desire for form and desire for formless until you eliminate personal existence view. So that's why they're separated that way. It's a personal growth plan. Okay. So now we're going to talk about the 4 stages of enlightenment, because as you're eliminating the fetters, the mind's going to be moving through these 4 stages of enlightenment. And there's certain indications that are going to help you to be able to see that you're actually moving through these 4 stages of enlightenment. And it's helpful for you because you'll know what to focus on next, this personal growth plan that you have. So this first stage, they refer to it during the lifetime of the Buddha as a stream enterer, because just like a log enters the stream and it's going to eventually get to the ocean, the same thing is true that once you get to the first stage of enlightenment, you're going to eventually get to enlightenment. It's only a matter of time. So that's why it's referred to as a stream enterer. That we might refer to this person as the first stage of enlightenment. That's kind of how we talk about it nowadays. Then there's a once returner. This is the second stage of enlightenment. The reason why it's referred to in this way is because if you die in this stage of enlightenment, you're going to come back into the human world one more time and you'll get to enlightenment in that life. So some of you guys might have been once returners in your past life, and now this is your opportunity to get to enlightenment in this life. Then there's a third stage of enlightenment called a non-returner. If someone dies in this stage of enlightenment, they're going to be reborn into the heavenly world, and then they're going to actually experience enlightenment from there, from that existence. But that's not the ideal. That's not the goal. The fourth stage of enlightenment, where the mind is actually enlightened, is referred to as an arahant. This is where the mind's been completely purified, and that's where the mind's actually enlightened. We would probably call this person an enlightened being, where during the lifetime of the Buddha, they would refer to them as an arahant. So these are the 4 stages and how they're referred to. And I teach you this because some people still use this terminology, but you'll typically hear me just say first, second, third, fourth stage of enlightenment. And you'll understand that the 4th stage of enlightenment is where the mind's actually enlightened. And then there's something called a Buddha, which is not a stage of enlightenment. I'll explain to you what this is as well. So the first stage of enlightenment is where you've eliminated the first 3 fetters. There's other things you would need to accomplish for the training of your mind as well, but the main criteria is if you eliminate these first 3 fetters, the mind will be in the first stage of enlightenment. And you'll know your mind's in this first stage because you have eliminated these 3 fetters, but also you're going to notice the significant decrease in your discontentedness. Whatever discontentedness you experience when you were off the path to enlightenment is going to be just a mere fraction of that by the time you get to the first stage of enlightenment. And if you die in this stage of enlightenment, you will come back into the human realm no more than 7 times. It doesn't have to be 7, but a maximum of 7 times. Then there's the second stage of enlightenment. The person has already eliminated the first 3 fetters, but now they're thinned out number 4 and 5. Thinning out a fetter is that it's not as strong as it once was. If you think back to maybe when you were a teenager, maybe your anger was really strong, really fierce, or now maybe it's kind of tapered off a bit. Or maybe when you were younger, you might have had a really strong sex drive, or now maybe it's tapered off a little bit. That's what it means to thin a fetter. So this person in the second stage of enlightenment, they've already eliminated the personal existence view, the doubt, and the wrong behavior and observances, and they've thinned out number 4 and 5. There's less sensual desire and there's less ill will in the mind. And once again, because of that, their discontentedness has shrunk. It's become less and less from even what it was when an individual was in the first stage of enlightenment. If someone dies in this stage of enlightenment, as I shared, they're going to come back into the human realm one more time and get to enlightenment in that existence. Then there's the third stage. This is called non-returner. They've eliminated all the 5 lower fetters. This individual is very rarely experiencing discontentedness. It's about once every 2 months, once every 3 months, once every 4 months that they're just experiencing a little bit of discontentedness. It's very infrequent and it's very insignificant when it occurs. It's kind of like 15 seconds, 30 seconds. Other people probably don't even know they're discontent because it's all internal. There's no outward indication that this person is discontent. There's maybe this ickiness, in the mind. So in this particular stage of enlightenment, you need to be very diligent, because the mind can become complacent because you're not experiencing very much discontentedness. Where earlier on the path, you had the motivation of the anger and the hostility and the bitterness, and the mind didn't like that. It was trying to get away from it. But by the time you get here, it's very infrequent and very insignificant when you're experiencing discontentedness. So you need to continue to stay dedicated and diligent as you're practicing the teachings. So this individual, if they die, they're going to be reborn into the heavenly realm, and they're going to get to enlightenment in that existence, because they just have a little bit of minor clinging and craving still in the mind. Then if someone completely purifies their mind of all the 10 fetters, this is referred to as an arahant, or an enlightened being, or the fourth stage of enlightenment. This is where the mind is actually enlightened. This individual doesn't experience any discontentedness. For 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, there's no discontentedness in the mind whatsoever. And if you die in this stage of enlightenment, there's no rebirth anywhere. The Buddha doesn't say what comes next for an enlightened being. He doesn't talk about an afterlife. He actually leaves it as an undeclared teaching. Specifically, he talks about it. He says, remember, monks, what did I teach? I taught this. And he points to the Four Noble Truths. And he says, remember what I did not teach. Remember my undeclared teachings. These are my undeclared teachings. And he gives 10 individual teachings that he says, these are undeclared. And one of those teachings is what happens to an enlightened being when they die. He didn't teach this, in my opinion, very wisely, because by the time you get to enlightenment, your mind's so peaceful and joyful. If there's something next, okay, great. It's either as good as what you're experiencing now or better. But if there isn't anything next, okay, that's fine too. You're completely content in the present moment. The Buddha didn't declare what is next or what isn't next. He just left it as an undeclared teaching. But let's just say that there is something next. And let's just say the Buddha described what this thing is. Well, that's just one more craving that you need to get rid of, right? If there's this big, wonderful, amazing thing after enlightenment, if the Buddha described it, then now your mind's going to be longing, yearning for it. And you can't get to it because you can't get to enlightenment because your mind's now craving that particular thing. You're not content in the present moment. So this path to enlightenment isn't about believing a bunch of things and then hoping something good happens when you die. It's about getting to a wonderful life now so that you're living the ideal life now. By the time you get to enlightenment, you'll thoroughly enjoy all aspects of your life. You'll be living in exactly the place that you've always been interested to live. You'll be working in the job that you've always been interested to work in. You'll have the friends and the relationships that you've always been interested in having. Your life, you'll be living the ideal life. There's nothing about your life that you would dislike. You would enjoy every single aspect of your life. So this path to enlightenment isn't about longing, yearning for something else where maybe the grass is greener on the other side. That's what the unenlightened mind has. It's never content in the present moment. It always thinks the grass is greener on the other side. And then you get to the other side and you're like, wow, the grass is the same color over here as it was over there. And now you're not content over here either, right? So the path to enlightenment isn't about longing, yearning for something after this. It's about getting to a wonderful life now in this life. And that's what an enlightened being or an arahant is experiencing. They fully purified their mind. It's performing optimally. Anything and everything that you've ever been interested in accomplishing, you can now do that because your mind's now performing optimally at that point. If you've been always interested in flying a helicopter, but you never had confidence in yourself that you could actually do it, by the time you get to enlightenment, if you'd like to fly a helicopter, you'll go fly a helicopter because you'll be like, wow, I have the ability to do that now because your mind's performing optimally, and you'll just go decide to train and become a helicopter pilot if that's what you'd like to do, right? So you'll be able to do that. So any questions on these 4 stages of enlightenment? No questions? Okay. All right. So now let's talk about what a Buddha is. A Buddha is not a stage of enlightenment. This is an individual who is an arahant. They are an enlightened being, but they've done this in a unique way that's different than the average enlightened being. A Buddha meets multiple criteria. There's 3 primary criteria. The first one is that they get to enlightenment without the help of any teachers or any guides. They do it on their own, through their own wisdom. The second criteria is that they dedicate the rest of their life to sharing their independently discovered teachings with countless people, and countless people will get to enlightenment during that person's lifetime. The third criteria is that they will preserve their teachings in such a way that countless more people will get to enlightenment after their death. So this is the three primary criteria of what makes a Buddha a Buddha. They get to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. They dedicate the rest of their life to sharing their independently discovered teachings, and countless people will get to enlightenment during that person's lifetime. Then they will preserve their teachings in such a way that countless more people will get to enlightenment after their death. So as you can see, this is very rare in the world. Oftentimes you'll hear people tell you that everybody is a Buddha. The Buddha never taught that. That's what people are saying today. The Buddha never taught that. He taught how rare it is for a Buddha to exist in the world. And you can see from these criteria, it's very rare that an individual would come into the world and be able to accomplish these types of things. Then there's other criteria too. This fourth one here is that an individual who's going to become a Buddha, even in the unenlightened state, they have a deep, profound memory. They can remember countless details about their current life and their previous lives too. This is actually how they get to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides, because they have an unlimited capacity to remember countless details. And they accumulate all this wisdom throughout their previous lives and their current life to be able to get to enlightenment in their last life by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. One of the ways you might think about this is like a hard drive on a computer. A hard drive has a certain limited capacity. And when you get to the capacity, you need to delete old files in order to store new files, right? An individual who's going to become a Buddha, they don't have that. They have an unlimited capacity. So this is why if you think back to your childhood, you probably have spotty memories, where in the last 5 or 10 years, you have pretty good recall of everything you've been doing because you've been storing all this data. But when you reached capacity, you needed to delete your old files in order to store your new files. And that's why you just have spotty memories about what happened in your past. But an individual who's going to become a Buddha, they don't have that. They can remember countless details about their current life and their previous lives, and they accumulate all that wisdom, and now they are able to get to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. But otherwise, a Buddha's mind functions exactly the same as the average human being, but they just have this one criteria that is a bit different. Then an individual who's a Buddha, they can quickly determine the condition of someone's mind by just spending time with them. They can see these fetters in other people's minds, and then they're able to offer them teachings that are going to help them to overcome those particular pollutions. They don't just insert themselves into people's lives and start going around and telling everybody what they should or shouldn't be doing, but for their students, the people who are learning from them, they can observe the quality of that person's mind and then offer them teachings. This is why a Buddha doesn't go around and perform lots of miracles, because they're not interested in convincing people that they're a Buddha, because this is one of the real powers that they have in order to be able to help people get to enlightenment. Because a Buddha is solely focused on helping as many people get to enlightenment as possible. That's the way to preserve the teachings for all of humanity, is for people to have it in their minds. If they can get to enlightenment and the Buddha can leave behind countless people that have gotten to enlightenment, then the teachings will be preserved in the people's minds. So a Buddha is focused on helping people get to enlightenment, not convincing people that they're an actual Buddha. And people not knowing that they're a Buddha is actually helpful for them, because now they can observe the quality of that person's mind and offer them teachings to be able to help them. Then lastly, a Buddha is going to be a living, breathing, walking example of their teachings. Whatever they teach, they're going to be practicing those same things as well, because a Buddha understands that they're teaching just as much through their actions as they are through their spoken words. So they're giving their students example of how to practice the teachings and be an enlightened being. So they're teaching just as much through their spoken words as they are through their actions. They're a living, breathing, walking example of their teachings. So these are the criteria of what makes a Buddha a Buddha. And we refer to this individual as a fully, perfectly enlightened one. The reason why is because by the time they get to enlightenment, what they know about the path is 100% the path to enlightenment. Where an individual who's gotten to enlightenment by learning from teachers who aren't a Buddha, those individuals are going to have a little bit of extra baggage in their mind. So for example, a student who's learned from a teacher, they might have gotten to enlightenment, and maybe 80 or 90% of what they've learned actually led to their enlightenment. But there might be some things that they're doing just out of respect for their teacher that didn't actually lead to their enlightenment, but they're still doing those things. But by the time an individual gets to enlightenment as a Buddha, they don't have teachers and guides. So if they try a certain meditation and it's working to improve their mind, they know that that's the path to enlightenment. But if they try a certain meditation and it's not working, they will discard it. They will get rid of it. So by the time they get to enlightenment, what they know is the path to enlightenment. And now they spend the rest of their life illuminating that path for other people. They're putting lights down along the side of the path, making it very clear of exactly what it takes to get to enlightenment. So that's what a Buddha is, and that's why we refer to them as a fully, perfectly enlightened one, because they don't have this extra baggage in their mind. Okay? Any questions on what a Buddha is? No questions? Okay. All right. So now I'll share with you how to know that your mind is not enlightened. This is just as helpful for you to understand what enlightenment is to understand what something is not. This is one of the ways that I actually teach, to be able to help you understand what something is to teach you what something is not. Enlightenment, and by the time someone gets to enlightenment, they won't be experiencing any conditioned feelings. Pleasant feelings, painful feelings are neither painful nor pleasant. Now, sometimes when I share this, people are like, hold on a second, David. I'm not going to be experiencing happiness when I get to enlightenment. Like, I'm not sure if I'm interested in getting to enlightenment or not. You need to understand this is conditional happiness, that you can only be happy if certain conditions are met. If I go to that restaurant and they have my chocolate cake, I'll be happy. But if they don't have my chocolate cake, I'm going to be angry and frustrated, right? So conditional happiness is dissatisfying. It's unsatisfactory because there's all these conditions in the mind that it can only be happy when these things are met. My mom and dad do this. My brothers and sisters do that. My boss does this. The weather is this. My bank account is this. I have this type of house, this type of car. Then I'll be happy, right? So your happiness actually shrinks. Your ability to be happy, because all those things being true is very unlikely, right? So you're getting rid of conditional happiness. And what you're doing is you're getting unconditional happiness, where the mind can be happy with no condition being met, right? There doesn't need to be any condition being met. You eat this food or that food, you can still be happy. You live in this type of house or that type of house, you can still maintain your happiness, right? The weather is this or the weather is that, you can still maintain your happiness. So by the time you get to enlightenment, there's unconditional happiness in the mind, where you can just be happy no matter what's happening. That's what we call unconditional happiness. So by the time you get to enlightenment, you won't have any of these conditioned feelings. Based on some condition, you are then going to experience these feelings. So there's plenty of happiness in the unenlightened mind, but it's unconditional. There doesn't need to be any condition met in order for that happiness to be there. Then if you have a craving, desire, attachment for other people to know you're enlightened, you know that you're not enlightened. So if you're like at a retreat somewhere and someone like rolls up to you, maybe at a coffee shop or something, and they're like, hey, Boulder, don't tell anybody, but I'm enlightened. You're like, you know that person's not enlightened, right? Because they're going around bragging, being boastful, arrogant, and prideful. An individual who's enlightened, their mind's so peaceful and joyful, they're not going around bragging. They're not putting it on their Facebook profile, right? They're not calling up mom, like, Mom, guess what? Aren't you so excited? I'm a stream enterer. Aren't you proud of me, right? Like by the time you get to enlightenment, you will have eliminated your conceit, right? So you're not going around bragging to people that you're enlightened, okay? So if you have that in your mind, you'll know that you're not enlightened, okay? Then if you're noticing complacency, where you're dull and lethargic, unmotivated, without any ambition or vigor or vitality, you're not having initiative to move your life forward, you know your mind's not enlightened yet. Because an unenlightened being will have complacency in their mind, where they're unmotivated, they're feeling dull and lethargic. But by the time you get to enlightenment, your mind is bright, it's cheerful, it's uplifted, you have gladness in your mind, you're making wise decisions to move your life forward, you have vigor and vitality, you're showing initiative to move your life forward. Okay, so this is how you'll know that your mind is not enlightened. So any questions on this?
So, how does preference, how does preference, okay, so I like certain,
Mm-hmm.
well, how does that fit into your personal or your pleasant feelings?
Sure.
So, I enjoy the color.
Okay. What colors don't you like?
I can't even imagine one that I don't like.
Do you like all colors?
Pretty much.
Okay. So if you told me that I don't like pink or I don't like green, right? If that's what your reply was to me,
Okay. Mhm.
there's a craving there because the mind's pushing away green or pink and it doesn't like it. It only likes these colors, right? So there's a craving, desire, attachment there. But if someone can be completely peaceful and joyful with all colors,
Any color.
then you still will have certain preferences, but you need to be observant of the mind to be sure that that's what it is. Because someone might say, oh, I'm just eating this chocolate cake because I prefer it, right? This is my preference, right?
Mhm.
But then when they show up in the
don't have
restaurant
it.
doesn't have it, now they're frustrated, right? So if you're getting discontent, there's a craving, desire, attachment
Okay.
there.
Oh, okay.
But by the time you get rid of your cravings, desires, attachments, you will have preferences, right? So like when I eat fruit, I prefer things like bananas, pineapples, things like this, papayas, things like this. I'll eat durian and I can eat durian and I have eaten durian, but it's just not something that I typically eat, right? If there's a bunch of fruits out on the table, that is probably not the one that I'm going to pick up and eat first. I have a preference, but at one time I had a craving because whenever I smelled durian or if I ate durian, I would push it away. I didn't like it. So you need to be sure you're attentive to the mind and make sure that you don't have cravings, and that if you're having a preference, that it is a true preference, that it's not a longing, yearning, and a craving, that you can be just as comfortable wearing this color as any other color as well.
Okay, so the key is if your discontentedness shows up,
Mm-hmm.
then it's a craving.
Yes, there's a craving there.
Okay.
Anytime discontentness shows up, because you can't experience discontentedness unless there's a craving. So that's your indication. And your mindfulness, your awareness of mind is going to help you to be able to discern that and see that for yourself.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to pause here for lunch, give you guys a chance to go have some food and refresh and everything like that. It's a little bit after 12. It's about 12:15. So we'll take an hour and a half lunch break, come back at 1:45, and I'm going to teach you guys Buddhist chanting. I'm going to teach you the history of chanting. I'm going to teach you these 3 individual chants of how to chant, and I'm going to show you how it's used in order to benefit you in meditation. It's not a rite, a ritual, or ceremony, or worship, or prayer, or anything like that, but I'm going to teach you all the details of it after lunch, and then we're going to end up doing a meditation session together too. So if you'd like to enjoy your lunch and come back at 1:45, you're more than welcome to. If there's anybody that's choosing to hang out here, or you're going to go eat and then come back, you're more than welcome to, because I'm going to leave the doors open. So enjoy your lunch, and I'll see you guys afterwards, okay? Sawadee Kap.